Shits and Seizures. LSD Trip Report from Arrowhead. Published on February 16, 2008. Posted by user, Boomer. Gender, male. Body weight, 68 kilograms. I have since I tried it, still do, and always will love LSD. I think there's something to be said about a non-toxic substance that with 210,000 ths of a gram can put me in a world apart from this one. It is, however, the non-toxic stigma that resulted in an almost catastrophic disaster. Especially with regular use, people sometimes forget how unyieldingly powerful LSD can be. My story begins when an old high school friend, who for the sake of anonymity we will call Megan, came up to visit me and my friends who moved off to go to CSU. She had never tripped before. I arranged the deal with my buddy the trip doctor, and we went to pick up 10 hits. Unfortunately, the doctor didn't have his usual stash, but instead a vial of liquid and a business card. He was on more acid than I've ever seen anyone on when we got there. He busted out the vial and carefully measured out 1 drop in the corner. This he deemed to be 1 hit. Well, after that he just kept getting distracted by his trip, so the next 9 hits were more puddles than drops. I took my acid under the tongue and that was that. Happy that we were making off with way more than we paid for, I hopped in the car and we drove off. When we got back to the apartment we gave Megan the hit and everybody else started eating up the big splotchy super hits. We waited about an hour and a half, and everybody was nice and fuckered up. Excepting Megan. I wasn't in the room or I would have objected, but Megan wound up with a super hit. We set out for the gas station to get some orange juice. On the way back Megan started tripping. She was having a good time, but kept complaining about an overwhelming sound of ping-pong balls, as she put it. We got back to the apartment and were having a merry time, when Megan started tripping face and was freaking out a little. After about 10 minutes she had calmed down. 5 minutes after that, she was asleep. This didn't make any sense to us. LSD has powerful stimulant qualities. He woke her up and asked what was going on. She just got up and went to the bathroom. When she didn't come out for 10 minutes, we started knocking. No response. Luckily, she didn't lock the door. The knob twisted, but the door wouldn't open. A lot of dead weight was blocking the door, and we knew the only thing that could do that would be Megan herself. With a lot of pushing, we created a gap large enough for me to slip through. I moved her out of the way, opened the door, and we started trying to bring her around. We even soaked her with the shower. Still no response. We checked her pulse, breathing, and temperature, and given that all was in order, we carried her into the spare bedroom, put her in the bed, and decided to let her sleep it off. The next hour would be one of the most horrible things I ever experienced. We resumed the party in the living room but it wasn't the same, and about half an hour later we heard moaning coming from the bedroom. We all dashed in to see what was going on, and Megan was having a seizure. Before I continue the story, I want you to imagine a close friend of yours having a seizure because of you. It's a horrible feeling. On top of the nerve-wracking guilt, you also need to make the split decision whether or not to call 911 and go to jail. Now, I haven't mentioned it yet, so, I was rolling balls that night and I was the only one. MDMA keeps me up, alert, and close to reality, and I was rolling more than I was tripping. This is good because there were 3 other people freaking out on those crazy fucking doses. Anyway, when we got to the bed, I smelled it before anyone found out. One of the girls threw back the covers, to reveal Megan lying in a pool of piss. "It's blood!" cried the girl, which was like setting off a bomb. Everyone freaked. I was yelling, "It's piss, calm down," and we started giving Megan a quick once-over, to see if she was hurt. We opened her eyes. They were just spinning, round and round inside her head. They were milky glazed over. We also noticed she'd bent her arm under her, and was biting uncontrollably, and she was burning up. I had the guy hold her jaw, had one girl fetch me a computer, and I went and got some vodka out of the freezer. I started dipping a rag in the vodka and dabbing her face and forehead with it. The reason I was doing this was to cool her off a bit. The alcohol is a liquid and around -10 degrees, and because of its low evaporating temperature, it helps to diffuse heat through rapid evaporation. When a computer was brought to me, I had the guy and one of the girls taking care of Megan, and the other girl and I were calling as many people as we could think of. We'd never heard of a reaction like this. We were scrambling for someone to tell us something, anything, about what the fuck was going on. After a few minutes on the computer, and after talking to a couple people, we came to the conclusion that Megan's life, though her appearance was horrifying, was not in danger. Her seizure lasted just over 25 minutes. Then, as abruptly and violently as it came, the seizure subsided, and she was snoring. From that point on, we didn't leave her alone for a couple hours. About 3 hours later my buddies and I were sitting in the living room. We heard the door creak open, Megan run by, and the bathroom door shut. We all jumped up, and roared, "Megan! Is that you?" Sure enough, the bathroom door opened and she was standing in the threshold looking at us with flickers of recognition coming and going across her face. We got her changed and huddled up in the corner of the couch. Although it was clear she was tripping so hard she didn't know where she was or what was going on, the few responses we got were just like her, although we were still a little worried that come morning she'd be addled. When we'd assured her all was well, and she returned the favor, she passed out again. This time though it wasn't the strained and strange pass out we saw earlier, it was just sleep. Fortunately, when morning rolled around Megan was calm, collected, alert, and didn't remember shit about the preceding night, which is just as well. We told her what happened, while sparing her the details, and told her not to trip acid again. We parted ways and all was well. Most people read from the Arrowhead experience vaults to learn something about a drug, and other people's experience with it. After reading this, I hope you will take these lessons from it, they were hard-earned. Firstly, always know how much of the drug you have. We didn't and it was a big problem. All of those I shared company with that night took way more than they typically would in recreational setting. Secondly, if you are giving someone their first taste of anything, be sure to carefully scrutinize how much they take, and how they behave afterwards. If they begin acting suspicious, try to get more information. Third, find out if the person takes medication and if they do, be sure not only to look up all drug interactions for the recreational substance you will be taking but also all the interactions the medication they take have. This ensures you don't get dangerous or potentially lethal gaps in your information. Fourth and final, if something bad does happen, keep your head and remain calm. Freaking out only adds to the confusion, and doesn't get you any answers. In fact it can waste precious minutes you can't afford to lose. Assess the situation, and see if the person appears to be in immediate physical danger. If they are, call 911 or rush them to the ER. Generally if you take someone to the ER, nothing will happen to you. If the person appears they could be in danger but clearly haven't reached it yet, it can be prudent to check online sources, and call whoever might be able to help, including whomever you purchased the drug from. Fifth and final, do not take drugs, give them to other people, etc. unless you really are willing to own up to what you've done if something goes awry. I've known some people, regrettably, who I'm sure would have just run away and left Megan lying there. Stay away from those people, and definitely don't become one. Seeing Megan in that LSD-induced seizure is something I'll never get out of my head. I do know one thing for sure. I'd rather see myself behind bars with memories of a seizure and possession of a controlled substance, than standing over Megan's casket to say one more guilty goodbye. This night turned out alright, but that doesn't mean it couldn't have been worse for us, and it certainly doesn't mean others won't have a similar, perhaps more dire, situation. Remember to be incredibly cautious when using something new, and triple that caution when you're dealing with a drug that's very, very potent. I hope someone finds this useful. I wouldn't wish the feeling of being responsible for something like that on my worst enemy. Please be careful. Also, don't forget, if Megan hadn't wigged out that night, I'm sure the trip would have been fucking epic. All 4 people, myself included, continue to use and enjoy LSD. Don't let a bad experience control your future decisions or your opinion of a substance. The substance in and of itself certainly isn't anything to fear. It's when it is used, or in our case administered, irresponsibly, or when someone whose body just isn't meant to handle that drug has a very negative idiosyncratic reaction. Don't forget that if you like to give first trips, you may at some point give one to the wrong person. That's my story, kids. Be good, be safe, have a good time. Cheers. Boomer.